Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Europa Rediviva. Today, I'd like to revisit the topic of civilizational states. I've spoken about this concept a couple of years ago in my first English language YouTube episodes. Feel free to check them out, where I've also detailed the geopolitics of Europe, the geopolitics of Asia, and the nature of various civilizational states. I think I specifically spoke about Turkey. But a couple of years ago, there was this notion that in this deglobalization process and in the exit of the unipolar world, a new paradigm, a new international architecture of power, a new international system will be built around civilizational states. It was an extension of the concept of BRICS. Initially, BRICS was just an acronym invented by some analysts from Goldman Sachs to describe emerging economies which seem to cooperate. This was, I think, back in 2010 or something like this. And back then, these countries only seemed to have in common the fact that they were rather large economies that were growing at a rapid pace because they were very poor. So when you're poor and you start growing, it's not hard to grow at 7-8% per year, maybe even more. China was growing at about 10% per year. Basically, it was doubling its GDP every 7 years. So there was this idea that these emerging economies also start to cooperate. They have this framework of cooperation. Initially, it was just the BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and then South Africa joined in, and it became the BRICS. And then it expanded towards other Arab nations, towards Latin America. It was the idea to extend membership to Argentina, but then Milei came along and declined. And also there was the idea to bring in some socialist regimes from Latin America, but in the end Brazil declined so as to have itself the only BRICS country on the continent. But Egypt and Ethiopia became members, United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, even though Saudi Arabia has yet to completely accept the membership, and Iran became a member as well. So there was this idea that these countries are coming together and they're building institutions that rival the Bretton Woods system, that rival the American-centric international organizations that lend out money to developing countries, but in conditions that favor American companies or Western companies and so on. So the BRICS did build these institutions. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization also built some complementary ones. That's just an Asian or Eurasian organization, so it does not extend on other continents. But the idea was that these countries break away from being American vassals because they hold some important history. They have an important identity that they cherish and that they do not want to give up for the sake of Hollywood and for consumerism. And that makes them civilizational states. Basically, if you have 5,000 years of history behind you, even though in the case of the Russians it's only 1,500. Well, depends from when you count, but essentially the idea was that if your people cherishes its independence, if your people cherish their independence and want to preserve their culture, this makes it an obstacle in the expansion of globalization, of American-centric globalization, of the power of the financial capital in your country, and so on. And this is what historical resilience gives. Being a civilizational state makes your population not want to be a lackey of the United States or of some other foreign power. and makes it stick together, makes it escape these attempts, these color revolution attempts that have as end goal the fragmentation of the country. If you read the Western press, if you read the American media and the American oriented influencers, they say China is too big, China is an empire, China needs to be broken up, China is persecuting its provinces, China is persecuting its minorities, every minority has to have its own state. The same with Russia. Russia is this prison of the peoples. It needs to be broken up in republics and to have them fight with each other. So essentially, the old divide and conquer approach to maintaining Western imperialism and to break up large civilizational states which have internal coherence and cohesion. And apparently this is not exactly working out. So the countries that are somehow favorable to the United States are not subject to this, but the countries that the United States deems hostile are the target of all these covert or overt wars, of these proxy attempts to conquer them and to break them up, like in the case of Russia with the help of Ukraine, or in the case of Iran using direct strikes and using Israel as a proxy, even though some would argue that Israel is using the United States as a proxy to break up Iran. The fake left in the West has already come up with the idea that Iran is an empire that needs to be broken up because it is persecuting its own people, and you have to have a free Iranian Kurdistan, a free Iranian Balochistan, a free Iranian Azerbaijan, and so on. And the end goal was China. The United States believes that it only has a few years until China can no longer be surpassed. And as a consequence of this, it needs to wage these proxy wars against China's allies and to have China the final target to be attacked by this coalition of the American-occupied regimes of the area, South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines, together with Australia and New Zealand, providing logistics. So this was the plan. It sounds a bit far-fetched, but it's the only chance that America has at preserving hegemony. Well, actually, America has zero chances of preserving hegemony, but this is the only attempt it can make. This is the only scenario it can try, because anything else will just essentially amount to an abandonment of the hegemonic position and to the establishment of this multipolar world or this sino-centric world. It's hard to say yet what the architecture of the system will be. But it will have China as the biggest economy, as the world's powerhouse in terms of manufacturing, in terms of technologies, high-end technologies. And the international economic system will be built around China as it slowly, gradually starts to be. And there are various countries in Europe which perhaps are not civilizational states in the classical sense, because they are not such vast spaces that they encompass several people and that they have a common identity based on this past civilization, as it is the case with Russia or with Iran or with China. You have these small places like Hungary, like Serbia, like Bulgaria, like Poland, who cherish their identity, cannot be considered civilizational states because they're just nation states, but they are aware of the change in the political system of the world, and they try to make steps in reorienting themselves away from being American vassals and to cooperate with China, and not only to cooperate with the other emerging powers. For example, Hungary has, and Serbia as well, they have extended great reaches towards Turkey, even though they had historical qualms with the Ottoman Empire. They had been conquered by the Ottoman Empire and ruled directly by the Ottoman Empire. and they would not regard Turkey a European country by any means. They would probably regard Turkey as an enemy of European civilization, and yet they have forged this pragmatic alliance, this pragmatic cooperation in various fields: energy, military, even. Hungary even joined the Turkic state organization. It regards its Asian, Uralic heritage as being something that could be employed in the new multipolar world or in the new Eurasian paradigm. So there is this shift towards a multipolar way of picturing the world, also in the minds of various European vassal states of the Americans. But this is not happening in Romania, strangely enough, and it's kind of like the pendulum swing after the independent policy that Romania employed until 1989. Romania was fiercely independent until 1989. It forged cooperation ties with whomever it wanted, and it was the best friend of all the countries in the world. It traded pragmatically, and it obtained investment, and it offered investment pragmatically to all sides of every conflict. It bridged the Sino-Soviet split. It was friends with Israel when the other socialist countries were not, but it was also friends with the Palestinians, and it recognized an independent Palestinian state. It was friends with the Arabs, with the Iranians, even with the Shah of Iran, but also with the regime of the Ayatollahs after the Iranian Revolution. So essentially it pursued friendship ties and cooperation ties with all the countries in the world. And this helped it industrialize quite fast. It helped itself pay off the cost of capital for creating this national economy. So this foreign debt that was accrued in order to buy up manufacturing equipment, in order to set up these huge factories. This foreign debt was paid off until the end of the regime, and Romania was at that time the only country in the world without foreign debt. So it was fiercely independent, radically independent. This is why after 1989 there was this huge propaganda wave to cancel everything that was done before 1989, and to ridicule everything, and to ridicule the idea of independence, of national autonomy, of pursuing one's own interests. And we have become the opposite of what we were. We've become the lackeys of Europe, the lackeys of the planet, I would say, because now this new generation of politicians is so afraid of saying anything to Romania's national interest. Even, for example, when Romania is attacked, as it was the case with the maritime drone in Constanța, which was a Ukrainian one, and all that the defense minister of Romania was capable to articulate was, we should not be ashamed to tell our partners that their maritime drones should not explode in our territorial waters, and so on. We should not be ashamed. So basically, right now in power in Romania, there's this generation, whereas the generation of their parents, let's say, who was running Romania before 1989, was proud to be independent and proud to trade with every country in the world. This generation, the generation of their children, is deeply ashamed of that past, is deeply ashamed of everything that remotely resembles independence, and it wants itself to be perceived as slavish as possible. So they will never articulate, Romania's current leaders will never articulate something like national interest, because they heard this when they were children. They associated with the time of Ceausescu. They associate the notion of national independence with Ceausescu and with communism, and they are trying to present themselves as being the opposite of that. So this is why they also belittle ancient Romanian history, whereas the Ceausescu regime took pride in this construct. At the end of the day, it's a construct, but the regime of Ceausescu took pride in this construct of coming from the Dacians, of being 2,500 years old, and so on. It's something that was seen as a source of pride Not because the historians in the time of Ceausescu were imbeciles, but because they took directives from the Romanian Communist Party to articulate a national history narrative that would create a proud identity in the Romanian people, that would instill strong national pride in the Romanian people that was necessary in order to maintain a system of national sovereignty. So, unless you have a strong national identity and unless you take pride in your history, even though I will admit that Ceausescu's historiography, which we still use now, was made up to a large extent. But if you do not take pride in your history and in your national identity, then there's no chance that you will defend your independence. These two are inextricably linked. You cannot fight for your community if you regard your community as being some sort of accident, some makeshift thing that was put together yesterday and that has no coherence, that has no identity, that doesn't deserve to exist as a country at the end of the day. So, of course, I was trying to target my efforts towards promoting sovereigntism, not following the premise that we were once great and we need to be great again, as it was under Ceausescu. This is not what I'm advocating for. I'm advocating for something way, way, way more diluted, which is the fact that as a citizen of Romania, not exactly as a proud Romanian, but just as a citizen of Romania, I want my country to offer me the services of citizenship, which are all the public services associated to being a citizen of a developed country, to the greatest extent. So, from defense, from protecting me from being targeted by terrorists like the ones I mentioned in previous episodes that Ukraine is running here and that threaten to kill basically all the elements of national interest, to positive rights like healthcare, education, housing, all of these things that Romanians used to be taught by the previous regime that they deserved. And now they are taught that they do not deserve anything. Now they are taught that they should not request from the state anything and that they should cater for themselves in this turbo-individualism that is specific to the most capitalistic regimes like the United States and like some of its colonies. So Romanians are now taught not to expect anything from their government, to just defend themselves, to admit to just being milked of their taxes in order to allocate that money for foreign interests, to not receive anything from the state. So the exact opposite of what a European welfare state is and what I was hoping Romania would become. And I've spoken in previous episodes that a source of this apathy in the Romanian public is the idea that they do not deserve more. They actually believe that they are worthless, and this is what keeps them meek. This is what keeps them beholden to foreign interests. They believe that they are worthless, that they don't deserve anything, and they have zero trust in themselves. Because the regime that was built on their own self-trust and that was fiercely independent was liquidated in this way by this gang of traitors that still run Romania until today. And that regime of national sovereignty was delegitimized to the extent that if you bring it up now, you'll just be the laughing stock, the butt of all jokes, if you bring it up in a positive light. So if you bring up the idea of Romanian independence, you're essentially being laughed off by the trained Romanians that the Americans successfully trained after 1989 with the help of the consumer culture and with the entertainment industry, with Hollywood and with MTV and with all these things. So this is why it's going to be extremely hard for Romania to be able to join in this shift, in this international power shift, and in this new architecture of the international system, because it doesn't have any inner resources. All its inner energies are now directed into defending the status quo from the sovereigntists and to basically vassalize Romania even more to foreign interests believing mistakenly that this is what pro-European means, or pro-Western, as if the Netherlands would need to sell off everything and to just uh, pawn off its population as some sort of livestock for another country in order to show that it is pro-European. It cannot just be European, it needs to be pro-European, and in this regard it needs to sacrifice everything and sell everything off. It needs to stop owning anything, because owning stuff is sovereigntist, and the Netherlands would need to become pro-European, just like the stooges that the Americans pay here in Romania to deliver this propaganda onto the masses. So this is what I wanted to say regarding the new system being built around civilizational states and on the impossibility of Romania joining. If you like what I do, like, share, subscribe, join my Telegram channel. If you speak Romanian, join my Substack at Europa Rediviva, the same handle as on YouTube, because I'm writing their stuff in Romanian. And until next time, take care. Bye bye.